Well, this one's kind of just amusing. That all of my videos kind of are, but this one's a quick one. And this is just on the concept of, will astrology ever be a science? And because I was kind of paying attention to Vic DeCara, who's a really brilliant astrologer. He practices Vedic astrology. He goes deep into the Phaladipika. It's hard to actually pronounce that one. I strongly recommend, if you're interested in some of the deeper interpretations of certain placements. He has so many great series. And someone had a comment, and the comment was, hey, I love your interpretations, Vic. I think you're really good, but I just feel everything is too subjective. And he later goes on to say, I would love to research more, but I want it to be like a science. It needs to be a science. And of course, I am not a fan of the sciences at all. The material sciences have their absolute merit, and they've produced wonderful results, but material sciences, when it comes down to the human experience, is incredibly lacking, right? Like, psychology is a fantastic example of a science that observes the final result, and it tries really hard to infer what went on to create that result. And sure, the material sciences and psychology will put up EKG scans, and they'll show oh, this is how your brain works, and these are the parts of your brain that light up, and they have these areas light up whenever you're doing a certain task. So it's if we manipulate these areas, then we can expect more of a certain task, and that's fine and well and good. But science has no idea what the initial impulse is. Why an area might be lighting up, but which of those brain cells end up really firing off? Well, science has no clue because there's no way to measure that. Whereas consistently, with regards to astrology as a system, is all about explaining what actually went into creating a certain impulse, or creating the pressure of a certain impulse that created the situation for a certain action to occur. So astrology infers, step one on, or maybe 1, 2, or 3 of a 10-step process, whereas the material sciences are very good at being able to isolate steps 7, 8, 9, 10, but they have zero idea about 1 through 6. So I say all this to say, in general, this is part and parcel as to why most people who go to astrology have placements that in astrology would indicate some kind of intuitive understanding of what goes on around. And by intuitive, we actually use the word subjective, that you can feel things out in a way that does a pretty good job of approximating the result. And science hates that. Material sciences want precision as much as possible. It has to be measured with instruments. It's that's the reason why ghost hunting was always considered ridiculous until we had all of these instruments to be able to measure electromagnetic fields, or now we have cameras that I don't know if you've seen anything recently with regards to ghost hunting and whatnot. Oh gosh, what is it? What's his name? The ghost hunter. What's Zach Baggins, right? I'm just gonna look it up here. Yeah, the ghost hunters. What was that, Zach Baggins or something? This guy. This guy was very, helped really popularize, the recent explosion of ghost hunting, and now we're accepting that ghosts are real because we can measure it with, we can measure electromagnetic fields and changes and things, and we have types of cameras, that are better able to capture something going on, right? It's become a bit harder to make fun of ghosts in today's day and age. Now, obviously, I do tend to think that's a lot more of that Scorpio influence generationally, that we're kind of able to go deep into the occult a bit and further again, and now we have all of this material science to kind of bring it out to a certain extent. And I don't know how long this song and dance can play out between the material and the spiritual before something really big happens, and there's going to be a massive correction one way or the other. But this is all plays part into so long as we are hyper materialistic, astrology is always going to be on the fringe, right? Because there's precision to astrology's aspect concept, right? You have a planet at a certain degree, and that's going to square or trine or sextile, semi-sextile, anything else that shares that degree in other signs, and that infers a sort of energy exchange, and you can give an interpretation of what might happen on that, but it's not going to be precise, right? You can't predict exactly what's going to happen on a certain day. During that that big conjunction recently in the end of July, early August, the one that was in Uranus, Mars, and Rahu, the North Node, were conjunct in Taurus, or Vedic Aries, and you can give an interpretation. Like for me, I had it squaring my midheaven, and had an astrologer who was reading that and warning me, hey, this could lead to someone stealing your car. This could be problems at the home. You want to stay away from work because there's going to be big things popping up. It could be secret enemies, which could be someone who just doesn't like you, and they're going to come up and strike and shake up your discord at home. Well, the actual manifestation was something on the career where someone behind the scenes at work started accusing me of something, right? That ended up being a big blow up in a war, because Mars represents that war, but you kind of had to play it all out from behind the scenes to make it work, right? Well, did she predict that exact event? No, but she got pretty close, right? It's like, there's a lack of precision in with astrology that material sciences go crazy over. But there's also just, this is a problem of the material sciences altogether. It's really associated with, at least the way we have it today with the universities, Sagittarius, right? You have groups of people from all these different backgrounds coming in, and they've agreed to try to come up with the best explanations for any phenomena with the material knowledge that we have, and anything that can't properly be explained, tends to be tolerated, but definitely kept under wraps. And we talked about this before, between the separation of church and state. Really could also be considered the separation between church and our higher institutions, our higher learned institutions, because those higher learning institutions are supposed to directly impact government. But anytime anything affects us directly, we want to control that. We want to go backwards. So sometimes government likes to control these things, and you do have that. Like, you have it right today, where where you have elitist cultures that absolutely try to repress and mitigate the free thought that occurs in Sagittarius, in our higher institutions, right, in our ninth house of institutions. So it's just one of those things where I would love for for it to become a science. I actually don't think it will. At least astrology, if it ever becomes back into the mainstream, we have to have a strong paradigm shift in terms of how we see ourselves within the universe. I think people need to learn to accept that there's an impact of planes of existence beyond our own. In other words, the material, represented by our Capricorn and Taurus and Virgo here, that these signs start to appreciate the fact that opposite of them, completely, in Pisces and Cancer and in Scorpio, that the spiritual aspect of these things, the subjective aspect of these things, actually do have tremendous power and direct impact on what happens in the material. So until science is able to reintegrate the concept of the soul and the spirit, because mind you, at one point in the long, long past, it did. There's a reason why Sagittarius in the ninth house, that it was also the house of religion, and this is it's if you have strong Sagittarius placements, that's when you become the preacher, right? That's when you become the minister. This is when you become the evangelist, right? And at worst, you become the dogmatist, sure, and you become someone spewing grand lies and all of that because it's related to Jupiter, and when there's that concept of you think you know more of the truth than you really know. It's your big ball of gas type thing. But that's the reason why they occupied the ninth house, because at certain points in time in human history, we well understood that spiritual experiences actually have sway and power, and they do shape our reality, and because of that, they by definition have to be incorporated, over here. But that's also why you have different religions altogether, and until we go back, because it's only within the past couple hundred years where our higher institutions, went from looking at the material world to understanding God, and shifting that to looking at the material world to try to disprove God, right? Or if it, and that's what leads to things like, well, I can't disprove God, but I can't prove he's there. So the material sciences have had this very, very convenient way around it, where we'll just zero it out. If we don't know, we'll zero it out, right? And I think I talked about this before, where in the great stock market crash, that stock market crash back in 2008. They crashed because everyone took these mortgage-backed securities with a bunch of these properties that were bundled with bad assets. Well, because we didn't know what was a good asset or a bad asset, we just zeroed it all out. Well, in reality, did that make the good assets bad? No, the good assets performed just fine. Of course, they performed just fine. And the smart investors look at that and they realize that, there was a folly in the way that they were looking at things. So because they were able to look in, between the lines, they were able to look at, the subjective concepts. They were able to easily pick those things up and make a huge profit off of that. That's why I don't respect science. I just don't. I do not respect science, because science today is viewed as the be-all, end-all. And even though it never really tries to say that, it knows everything, again, that's that problem of Sagittarius, problem of Jupiter. Really hard to really believe that about themselves, that they don't know everything. BS. They believe they know everything. BS. They absolutely believe that they are the be-all, end-all. And obviously it's its own problem. And so you're seeing that today. So yeah, it's a long, long-winded way of saying, no, I don't, in the current context, I do not view astrology as ever being a science, only because you have to bring back subjectivity and to reincorporate that back into your broader-minded ideas. But then all you're doing at that point is, quote-unquote, taking a step backwards, and you are going back to creating new religions. And, but when you look at everything going on today, is that not happening anyway? Is that not the nature of the ninth house? Is that not the nature of Sagittarius? Is that not the nature of these placements to create religion? Do you not see that? In the material world today, the people that follow the religions of today that have removed God and they've replaced it with certain ideologies that they can't stop proselytizing over. So, it's. Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting. Then the time that astrology ends up being accepted again is going to require a vastly different view of science and of what's really supposed to be accepted and what can be tolerated in terms of what's knowable and not knowable. So All right, that's it for today. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.